When you light up a scene, you have dozens, if not hundreds of decisions you need to make, and each and every one of them is a potential ripple effect into your next decision. Well, I just came back from a big shoot and I wanted to share with you not just the BTS, the setup, and the technique, but also the decision making behind our lighting decision. Let's dive right in. I've been hired for the past year to film a video podcast, and we needed to go film some new episode at a new location, out of state. And the plan was to use a property that had amazing outdoor spaces for us to create different looks for each episode outside. And so we rented a grip truck and customized it mostly for outdoor shooting. Now, we knew we were going to film a couple episodes inside, but mainly it was going to be for outdoor use. The plan was for 1 day of setup and 2 days of filming. And by the time we got there, the forecast was clear. It was going to rain the entire trip. And we were forced indoors right away with almost no chance at all for us to go outside. And it was a little bit challenging because of the equipment on the truck. Now, most of it was fine. We had planned to be indoors anyway. But a lot of our lighting was specifically selected to work outside. So let me show you the setup. So this is the room before we got into it. This is what it looked like. And there's other options in this house, but this was the main area that we felt like we could use. So we actually did two setups in this room. We did a two-person setup, and then we moved to a three-person setup. So this is our two-person setup. And the first thing we can look at is we have 3 cameras. We have 2 singles and 1 wide shot, which is typical. And we're using the FX9 here. The FX3 is in the middle as the wide shot, and then the FX6 is the other single. And that's kind of been our setup on the other episode. So we kind of knew right away that that was kind of be the general setup. And so typically when we first start working on a room like this, after clearing everything, we try to find the position for our cameras. And it all starts with the FX3 because you want it to be kind of dead center on that fireplace, which is then going to determine dead center on that table, which then is going to determine the position of the chairs. In this particular case, we felt pretty good about the cloud coverage and thought, okay, I think we can embrace the window, show the windows in the frame, and we have enough light power to kind of balance it. And we're not too much at risk of a change in exposure or in brightness coming from the window. After that, then we can place the other 2 cameras in order to frame, kind of roughly frame our single shots. And we do that fairly early on. That's kind of like the first thing we want to do because we don't have enough light to just light everything. And so we're going to be selective on where we place our lights based on the shots. In a room like this, it would be awesome if we had all the gear in the world and we can light up the entire room where wherever they go, wherever movement they make, then they're lit properly. It's not our case here. We have 4 lights total. We have an Amaran, that's the 200X, so it's a bicolor, right? I can control the color temperature of that particular light. We have the Aperture 300X, which is also a bicolor, so I can adjust color temperature. Then we have the Aperture 600D, which is daylight only, so it's a 56K light. And then a 1200D, also daylight. So my 2 main big lights are actually daylight color temperature that cannot be adjusted internally. They can be adjusted with the gel or whatever, but as far as the lights themselves, they're daylight temperature. We set up the cameras first so that it gives us an idea on the framing that we're going to have and where we can and cannot place lights. It was important for me as the DP to set the tone from the beginning of filming the first episode that I wanted contrast and I wanted my darker side of their face to be towards the camera, right? Towards the inside. So that when they look at each other, this side is darker, this side is brighter because the camera is here. And so I want to shoot towards the darker side, which is your normal typical thing. Well, what happened is now you have a far key. So your key light needs to be extended way out. And so this light that we see here, which is the 200X, is actually the key light for this person. And this light source over here is the key light for that person, just so that they're being lit on the correct side. In this scenario, we have all those windows that are bringing all this light. So we also have to be careful that it looks natural, it looks normal, that they're lit the way they're lit. And so here you can see the shot itself, and you can tell on his skin tone that he's a lot brighter here than he is on this side. And that's because he's getting his key light from this side. And even though the room key light is coming this way, it was important for us to light him up from his left side. And to me, it still looks natural because his head is kind of turning towards the window where, that's where the light source is. Now, obviously, he's getting lit a lot more towards the front. If we were true to this environment, his key light would be behind him, shining this way, and he would be mostly backlit. And so that's, those are the decisions you need to make and figure out, how do we make this look natural even though the light is coming from the window. Let me show you his key light. So one of the other issue that we had using the 600 or the 1200 is we only brought one modifier for them, and that was a gigantic parabolic softbox. And we felt like it was probably too large and would spill too much light into the entire room. And so this is actually the key light. That's the 600 in there. And we put a diffuser in front of it as a modifier. And then it's contained by negatives. And so there's a negative on the ground to avoid the spill on the ground, because then on the floor, on the rug, you would see this harsh lights coming in, and it just didn't look natural. So we're able to flag the floor, and then this flag here is actually flagging the back wall so that you wouldn't have, again, this harsh light hitting the back wall. And that's something that when you're using diffusers, like this one is a 4x4 diffuser, and it's about, 2 or 3 feet away from the light, then that light beam has all kind of room to exit and to spill all over your scene. That's why a softbox is better at containing the light, right? It's black all around it, and it's only letting light out of the front. It's containing the spill. So you have a lot less to worry about. When you're doing it that way, you're getting a softer light, because I can move this diffuser further away from the light, or I can even put a bigger one and diffuse that light even more. And so the light becomes a lot softer. The downside is, by moving it away from the light, you're creating a lot of room for the light to spill onto your scene. And so now you need to shape the light so that it only goes to where you want it to go. So sometimes they would look directly into their own camera because they're delivering a message directly to the audience, and sometimes they're looking at each other. On this particular shot, he's looking straight into the camera, and you can see there's a little bit of ratio here between this side and that side. And again, I think it looks natural. I think it's fine. We have this window here that's suggesting a lot of levels coming this way. And so the fact that this is lit more than this side, to me, looks normal and natural. We just basically had to enhance the level of what the window is bringing just by moving the key light a little bit more towards the front of him. What's missing on here is a backlight. We can see a little bit on his shoulders here. We can see on the 250X, which is, again, the key light for this person, we use egg crates. And the egg crates are really our way of controlling the spill of that light. What we don't want is that light to just go everywhere and end up on top of the head of this person. And so that's how we control kind of the backlight, is by putting this egg crate, instead of the beam spreading out, it's going to make the beam go straight. But with this gentleman, it's tricky just because of his hair, and you quickly get some really hot spot on his on the top of his head. And so we ended up having to block quite a bit. And if I look at the other guy, that works perfect because obviously it looks like he's looking straight into the window. So it looks totally natural that he's being lit on his right side. And now we have contrast ratio between his right and his left. Now he has a nice backlight. And that backlight is obviously the big giant light source. That's the key light for the first gentleman. And same thing, we are able to kind of contain it and shape it with different flags to make sure that it hits only a certain area so that we're happy with the level of backlight that he's getting. This one was super interesting because of the depth that we had. And this room was wide open behind him into the entryway. And then there's like an office back here. The front door is here. And so it just created a lot of depth that we could play with. And this space right here is actually a staircase going downstairs to the lower level. And he had some light in this staircase that were very warm, actually too warm and not bright enough. We placed our own lights in there. And basically it's just one of those lamps. We removed the shade and we placed a pretty harsh or a pretty strong flood light bulb in it and then put it on a dimmer. And then we're able to control the intensity. And then we also had a small aperture cube light that we can control intensity and color temperature. And we placed those at different levels on the staircase until we get to what you see here. And basically, the idea here with depth and the way you amplify depth is by creating different levels, different brightness and contrast. And so we have this area here that's pretty dark. And, like this wall is a certain brightness. And then the beam here is a different brightness. And then here we have a very bright spot. And then we have a different one here and another one here and another one here. And you just keep on going and you create those different levels in order to create even more depth into your shots. This lamp here is on a dimmer. And it's a normal 32K light bulb. And then same thing, we just tap into it, adjust the dimmer until we find the right levels to then create a little bit of brightness here. It makes it look pretty natural as far as what's happening on the floor, even though that's not really coming from the lamp. It's actually coming from the window in the entryway. We are never in a fully controlled environment. And so we can obviously see that we have big windows coming in. So we have 56K lighting coming into the room, but then we have a lot of 32K lights as well. At first, you may think, let's turn off all those incandescent light bulbs, shoot everything at 56K. Well, we like the warm feel for our podcast. That's kind of what our client wants. And so turning this into 56K is probably not the right plan. And so which color temperature do we want to use? Because we can't use 32 or else those windows are going to look even bluer than they look here. And so how do you make that decision? So the first thing we did once the cameras were kind of in position was to take a reading. We put a white card and did a white balance with one of the camera, and it told us it was at 38K. So with that information in mind, knowing that I need to be somewhat close to a 38K, and actually looking at the white balance that we did, 38 to me looked way too warm. And there's no way for me to achieve that and still balance those windows right. And so I knew that I probably wanted to be closer to like a 40K, or maybe 41, somewhere in that 42, somewhere in that neighborhood. Our big key light we know is daylight only. So it's blasting 56K into this room. And now I need to balance it with this 300X. I'm bouncing it off this whiteboard at 32K. And then once I have that mixed color temperature, then I can tweak my white balance so that their skin tone looks right, the room looks pretty warm, and the windows don't look too blue. And it's a balancing act. Like, I'm not gonna get it perfect because it's all mixed color temperature. But I think we got pretty close. all the lighting setups are going to work off of the same principles, the same kind of technique, is just adapting it for the environment, the gear that we have, and the situation. And then it's just a matter of solving problems. And that's where those hundreds of decisions happen. If you see something here that you would have done differently, or you didn't like, or something that you did like, feel free to comment, share your thoughts, your process, how you would have done things differently, or some of the things that you've learned on this particular setup that can help you. Because I really believe that all of us can learn from each other. And that's the beauty of this platform, is we get to share our thoughts and our experience with each other. And so please feel free to do that on this particular video as well. Tune in next week for the second part, where I'll discuss the 3-person setup. But thank you so much for watching till the end. I really appreciate your time. Happy filming.